works so much better than the setup I had when I did chapter 1. Hopefully my phone's not going to be falling. I've got the house to myself, so hopefully it'll be quiet, and we can get through chapter 2. So, hope everyone's doing well. This is chapter 2, where we talk a little bit about the court system. And then, unfortunately, because the court system requires so much money and so much time, we're going to talk about other ways that disputes are resolved, called alternative dispute resolution. Some ways that cases get settled outside of just having your trial that you typically see on TV. So first off, though, let's talk about judicial review. Judicial review. This is the process by which a court decides the constitutionality, big word there, that's your first blank though, constitutionality of legislative enactments and actions by the executive branch. All right, so 3 fill in the blanks there. This is what we talked about though with the separation of powers and the system of checks and balances. Here's where the courts come in. So judicial review, the process by which a court decides the constitutionality of legislative enactments. Remember, legislative branch makes the laws. They decide the constitutionality of those enactments, of those laws, and also the actions by the executive branch. Remember, the executive branch enforces those laws that the legislators write. So this is where the judiciary comes in. This is where our court system comes in. So point A under there is no mention of judicial review in the U.S. Constitution. Instead, it is established in the case of Marbury versus Madison. M-A-R-B-U-R-Y versus Madison. Marbury versus Madison, this is where the concept of judicial review comes into play. So now we're talking about the court system. First, we're going to do a little overview of some topics dealing with the courts. Then I'll briefly kind of take you through the litigation process in the next part. So jurisdiction. Jurisdiction, and you need to know this. This is the authority. The authority, that's the first blank. The authority of a court to hear and decide a specific action. So if the court doesn't have the authority, meaning they don't have jurisdiction, then they can't make a decision. So jurisdiction has to be established. The authority of a court to hear a case has to be established before they can make a decision affecting those parties or that property or whatnot. So there's a couple different types of jurisdiction. First is personal jurisdiction. That's point A there. This means that the court has to have jurisdiction over people and businesses. Okay, so the first type of jurisdiction is personal jurisdiction. The court has to have jurisdiction, meaning they have to have authority over people. All right, so what we're talking about here, and when I say people, I mean the business, I mean the real property. If there's real estate involved, they have to have authority over that thing. All right, so point number 1, little one under there, there's something called the long arm statute. And there's not any blanks to fill in, but I want you to know what the long arm statute means. This permits a state to exercise jurisdiction over non-resident people. So it allows the state of Kentucky to have authority over, or to have jurisdiction over, somebody who lives in Illinois. Now, how do they get that? Well, under the long arm statute. And what this standard is Kentucky must have minimum contacts with that person. Okay, so that person who they're trying to have jurisdiction over, they have to have minimum contacts with them. Now, let me give you an example to put this into play. Think about I-24 here in Paducah. Runs right through Paducah. There are people all day, every day from other states that are using I-24 and driving through the state of Kentucky. If one of them causes a terrible accident on I-24 in Kentucky's borders, but they're from Ohio, well, guess what? You, the injured person, do not have to go up to Ohio to sue them. Instead, you would argue that our courts here in Kentucky have jurisdiction over those defendants, over the people from Ohio who caused the horrific car wreck, under the long arm statute, because you would argue that Kentucky has minimum contacts with that person so as to make them have to come to Kentucky to defend themselves in our state system. Okay, so the same when we're talking about personal jurisdiction over the people, over the business. If it's a land dispute, obviously that property is located in the state of Kentucky. So the state of Illinois is not going to have jurisdiction over that. We're talking about what can the state of Kentucky, like how I keep drawing it out, what can they preside over? And that's the same for any court. I just use Kentucky as the example. In addition to personal jurisdiction, the courts also have to have something called subject matter jurisdiction. That is jurisdiction over the type of dispute. That's the blank there, the type of dispute. For example, if someone passes away and you need to probate their will, you go to probate court. Family court is not going to hear your probate court matter because they don't have jurisdiction over that type of dispute. You have to not only have jurisdiction over the people, but you have to be in the appropriate court because certain courts can only rule on certain types of disputes. All right? Now, in addition to personal and subject matter jurisdiction, there's another type of jurisdiction. We talk about original jurisdiction versus appellate jurisdiction. Now, original jurisdiction is where you file your lawsuit. It is where you have your trial. It is the first court to make a decision on your case. They have the original jurisdiction. Then, if you're not happy with a decision, and we'll talk more about the appeals process, if you're not happy with your decision and you want to file an appeal with the Kentucky Court of Appeals or then on to the Kentucky Supreme Court, that they're going to have appellate jurisdiction. So the things that they can rule on are limited. They are not the first people to hear your case. They are the appellate court. So they have appellate jurisdiction, meaning they're reviewing something else. They're reviewing what the lower court did. And then finally, point D, when we talk about federal court, so keep in mind throughout all of this, you've got state courts here in Kentucky. In Paducah, you've got your courthouse down in McCracken County, down on 6th Street. That is state courts. That's for state laws, state matters. What you also have is federal court, where they're enforcing federal rules. We are fortunate enough in Paducah to have a federal courthouse here in Paducah, downtown.